Marquis. Eric's life changed dramatically at the age of 35. He has thought since that he has lived two lives, the one before 35 and the life he created for himself after that. It was not an easy transition, but the pain then has led to his happiness now. Please welcome Eric Marquis. We got it.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters, guests, Mom McNamara. I want to have a long talk to you after the meeting about your son, Bill, if you have the time. My speech today is my two lives. My name is Eric. I'm an alcoholic. That clearly delineates the two lives that I lived. One up to the age of 35, one after 35. 27 years ago, yes, I'm almost 62, I quit drinking, finally, and for good. I've been clean and sober since, and it's been a completely different life. Before 35, not being self-aware doesn't even describe who I was. I had no idea who I was. I would drift with any group that seemed flashy, and it was a way to ingratiate myself with people. And I was very restless. I never felt settled. My antidote to that was to drink and to get high. My father was in the diplomatic corps, and we lived all over the world. We lived in Asia primarily. And I had my first drink, a Tom Collins, at the age of 14. The Champagne Room in Bangkok, Thailand. I was on a date. I was running around a little bit then. Those were my first drinks and the first time I got high. In high school, we were in India. And again, ran with a group of people. All of us were drinkers, smokers, class skippers. Nobody did anything of any real value in high school. I scraped through and graduated and came back here to Washington, D.C. I wasn't sure what to do with myself. And one of the things that has happened to me before 35 was an inability to make the most reasonable type of decisions about my life, or to be introspective in any way, or to think about myself in a real way. And that manifested itself in all kinds of things. One, I went to school at George Washington University and chose as my major Chinese studies. My father begged me to take journalism and write. What do you know? I got a job while I was in school at GW at a liquor store. I quit my senior year. A friend of mine owned a restaurant and said, "Why don't you come and work for me?" And I said, okay. And I left in my senior year. And that began the fabulous 80s. For those of you who were not of age in the 80s, to do some of the things I did, it was a crazy decade. People were partying like mad. And it was the advent of cocaine, and it was pre-AIDS, so you could meet people and not worry about dying. This was a time when I totally disappeared and submerged. I barely remember my late 20s and early 30s. I had a different address almost every year. I worked in several different places. Alcohol then started to take a center place in my life, but I didn't even realize that that was going on. Everybody around me was drinking the same way I did, so it didn't seem unusual at all. I finally got to a point, and this was because of my first marriage. I met my wife in a bar. We got married. We were both drinkers. Doesn't make for a good marriage. I finally got to a point at the birth of my second son where I decided, well, I have to do something about this. I can't be a father and keep drinking. I went to my doctor, Kaiser Permanente, Dr. Ward. Dr. Ward told me that if I did not stop drinking, I would be dead by the time I was 40. At that point, I was drinking about 1.5 quarts of vodka a day, and then a few beers thrown in there too. I would drink first thing in the morning. I would drink all day long. And as my marriage with my ex-wife Teresa started to crumble, I had a second son born, and I decided rather than to face my drinking, I'd just leave, which I did. During that time, I remember waking up in my car in downtown Washington, D.C. It was about 7:30 in the morning. I'd slept in my car. There was a bottle and a brown paper bag in the seat next to me. People in suits, shaved and everything, are walking down the street with their briefcases going to work, and I was sitting there in the car going, where am I? How did I get here? What's going on? I then went to a friend's house for a week and continued my drinking binge. My father finally found out where I was and called me and said, Eric, you've got to come back here to our house right now. He said, I'm going to get you into a program. And I finally agreed, and a couple of days later went there. I bought a pint bottle on the way. I sat in the driveway of my dad's house and drank the pint bottle, and then went and knocked on the door. And he answered the door, and he had this look of just utter sadness on his face. He took me to Arlington Hospital, where I was put in a 72-hour detox. I'd been in programs before. I'd been in a week-long program, and then again in another 3-day detox thing. This one was particularly bad. This is my worst. I was put in a room with a heroin addict who was coming off of heroin. I was in worse shape than she was. And I couldn't feed myself. I had petit mal seizures. I was shaking uncontrollably. They had to feed me. I couldn't get a fork up to my mouth without all the food falling off. After 3 days, I came out, and I stayed with my folks for a few months and trying to decide what to do. Well, I want to go back with my wife. That's not happening. She doesn't want you back. Well, I've got to see my kids. That's not going to happen right now either. I've got to be sober for a while. So I finally started to crawl out of this place that I'd found myself in. That first year was one of the where I was hanging on by my fingernails. I felt wretched every single day. I finally came to a point where I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to get another job in the restaurant business, though my counselor, Lou, said, stay away from the restaurant business, please. But it was really the only thing I knew to make money. So I went back in the restaurant business. I went back to school, George Mason University, and started to study psychology. But I still had this sense of being restless, this sense that I wasn't where I was supposed to be and wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. I'd never ever thought about these things. What was I capable of? What could I do? What did I want to do? What was going to make me happy? And I got out of school, I quit again, and said, I can't be a counselor. They make $30,000 a year. I'm making a lot more money working in the restaurant business. I've got 2 kids I've got to support. I got a decent apartment. I just started concentrating on raising my kids, and I stayed really busy. I decided to continue with a few more classes, so I'd take a couple of classes during the semester. I was working full-time. I'd have my kids 3 days a week. I was always in the car driving people, picking people up, going to work, going to school, doing this, doing that. Stayed really busy. In the meantime, my wife and I, ex-wife and I, were in court for 3 years in and out of court. She was angry, and she took me to task for everything. That eventually ended when a judge in Virginia told her, you're going to stop micromanaging your life right now using the court system. And that ended it. And I was free of that. And I'd managed to stay sober through all of that, but I hadn't made the transition into thinking about the life I wanted and who I could be. I remarried. We lived for 5 years in an apartment up there and then sold it and moved down here. And down here was where I thought, okay, I'm starting to become aware of who I want to be and what I want to do. And Toastmasters really helped me with that. I want to be a public speaker. I like talking in front of people. And I finally said, okay, I'm going to do it. And we had started businesses before, Mimi and I, my second wife. And so I started working on this seminar business, which is pretty much ready to go. We're going to pull the plug in a couple of months on that, and I'm going to try to do my first seminar. I finally found a certain modicum of peace. I'm still a little restless, but my second life has turned out to be the best life and a better life than I could ever have imagined. We live in a wonderful house. It's filled with love, cats, and sand. And I'm so happy. And I never thought I would be here. And Toastmasters helped me, along with a lot of other people. And I'm still searching, I'm still seeking, but I feel like now I'll make it down to that place. Thank you.